A businesswoman walks into her luxurious mansion, accompanied by a 15-year-old boy who doesn't even have a bed to sleep in. The contrast is striking. She is white, powerful, the owner of an empire. He is black, poor, dismissed by the world. Her son watches everything from the top of the staircase, his eyes filled with shock, almost anger. "Is he going to live here?" he asks. And the mother's response cuts through the silence with both firmness and compassion. "Yes, it's already decided. He's going to live with us." In that moment, something changes forever in that house and in each of their hearts. Ben was only 15 years old, but his eyes carried decades of suffering. Tall, thin, always wearing clothes too worn for his age, he walked the streets as if he didn't belong to the world around him. He grew up in a neighborhood forgotten by the city, where sirens replaced lullabies and the sound of gunshots marked the hours. His mother, consumed by alcohol and the ghosts of the past, was rarely conscious, and when she was, the little lucidity she had left turned into screams, insults, and slaps. Ben managed on his own. He woke up early every day, made his own breakfast with the little left in the pantry, packed his books into his backpack, and went to school. After classes, he did odd jobs, handing out flyers, washing cars, helping at markets. With the money, he bought food or a new notebook when he could. He never got involved with gangs, never gave in to the pressure from the troubled boys in the neighborhood. He had a clear dream. He wanted to study, succeed, change his life. Every day at noon, Ben took a break at the same little park. He always sat on the same bench, eyes staring into nothingness, and his stomach growling loudly. It was there that Kristen saw him for the first time. An imposing woman, sharp-eyed and purposeful in her steps. A self-made billionaire, Kristen also knew pain. She had come from nothing, worked tirelessly since she was 13, and built a business empire respected throughout the country. Despite her fortune and power, she never forgot where she came from. That day, in particular, something made her stop. Ben's days. There was something about him that held her attention. She watched him from afar for days. The way he quickly ate a pack of cookies, how carefully he protected his books, how he pretended to be okay, even with teary eyes. Kristen started having lunch there more often, waiting for the right moment. And when she noticed he was getting thinner, his eyes sadder, she approached him. "Can I sit here?" she asked with a kind smile. Ben nodded, half suspicious. It was rare for a stranger to talk to him, especially a white, wealthy woman in an elegant suit and a sophisticated perfume. "You look tired. Are you okay?" Ben hesitated. He wasn't used to kindness. After a long silence, he simply answered, "I'm fine, just resting." Kristen saw in that boy a reflection of herself from the past. They began to talk. She came back the next day, and the next. She learned everything about the absent mother, the cruel routine, the desire to be someone in life. Soon, Kristen was bringing him sandwiches, fruit, and water. And that day, seeing him trembling from hunger and cold, she made a decision. "Ben, do you want to come with me? Just for a while. I have a safe place. You can rest, eat well, keep studying." Ben's eyes widened. "Like, live with you? You don't have to decide now, but I want to help you. You don't deserve to live like this. Someone believed in me once. Now it's my turn to do that for you." Ben took a long time to accept, but that night when he came home and found his mother unconscious on the floor from drinking too much, the door open, and nothing to eat, he knew. He had no other choice. Kristen welcomed him into the mansion with tenderness and respect. He was breathless upon entering. He had never seen such a large, clean place, smelling like fresh cake in the air. A friendly woman named Clara took him to a room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite. It had a soft bed, huge closets, and a lamp with a soft light. Ben sat on the bed, placed his hand on the blanket, and cried softly. For the first time in years, he felt safe. But the comfort of that night was shattered the next day. Kevin, Kristen's son, also 15, didn't understand anything. When he came downstairs for breakfast, he found Ben sitting at the table. "What is he doing here?" he asked, outraged. "He's going to live with us for a while," Kristen replied firmly. "What? That's ridiculous, Mom. He's a stranger. You don't even know him." "I know more than you think, Kevin, and this is my house. He's staying." Kevin huffed, threw his napkin on the table, and stormed out, slamming the door. He didn't want to share attention, space, much less his life with a poor boy. Kristen tried to talk to her son, to explain, but Kevin refused to listen. He said that if he couldn't live with his father in Europe, then he didn't want to know anything anymore. He locked himself in his room and ignored Ben's presence. Ben, for his part, felt like an intruder. He avoided crossing paths with Kevin, the household staff, even Kristen herself. He stayed in his room, studied, read, and when everyone was asleep, he went to practice shots on the basketball hoop in the garden. I don't want to be a bother. I can leave if it's better," he said to Kristen one night. She held his hands. "Ben, you're not a bother. You deserve to be here. I believe in you, and I won't let you give up on yourself." Days later, Kristen did something even bolder. She enrolled Ben in the same school as Kevin. She wanted to give him the same opportunities, but she didn't expect it would spark a silent war. Kevin and his friends started provoking Ben. They called him a charity case, mocked his simple clothes, said he didn't belong there. Ben tried to ignore it, but every day was a new humiliation. It was on the basketball court that he found strength. He began training every day. He was agile, intelligent, a strategist. Soon, the teachers noticed his talent. The junior team coach invited him to try out, and Ben shined. He played as if his life depended on every point. Maybe because it really did. The crowd started to change. Some classmates began to admire him. Others, like Kevin, only fueled their hatred. Ben didn't want rivalry. He just wanted a chance. And there, in that new world full of luxury and prejudice, he would learn that the greatest challenge wasn't winning in sports. It was winning the heart of the one who most wanted to exclude him. Ben's success on the courts began to deeply unsettle Kevin. With every new victory, every compliment Ben received from teachers or classmates, Kevin felt his space shrinking. He who had always been the center of attention now found himself overshadowed by someone who hadn't even been part of his world weeks before. His wounded pride turned into resentment, and resentment into hatred. Kevin started to watch Ben with cold, calculating eyes. Every move the boy made was an affront. Every smile he received was a blow. He couldn't stand seeing him grow, achieving what Kevin himself had always had effortlessly. Then an idea came to him. Cruel, cowardly, but effective. He needed to get rid of Ben, and he knew exactly how. "What if the school found out who he really is?" he whispered to one of his closest friends, Josh, one afternoon after practice. "What do you mean?" "I'm saying, what if he got caught with something serious, something that would get him out of here for good?" Josh laughed, not believing Kevin was serious. But he was, very much so. That week, Kevin began planning. He knew Ben carried an old backpack and often left it in the locker room during practice. One day, when the court was emptier, he sneaked over to Ben's backpack, carefully unzipped it, and pulled out a small package from inside a jacket. It was fake, but convincing. A bundle of drugs bought at a high price from a neighborhood acquaintance who asked no questions. He put the package at the bottom of the backpack and left as if nothing had happened. The next morning, the school was filled with a silent commotion. An anonymous tip had been made. The administration, forced to act, called the police. Within minutes, officers arrived at the school, and the hallways were filled with tense footsteps and whispers. When the officers searched Ben's backpack and found the package, the boy froze. That's not mine, I swear," he said desperately, eyes wide as he was handcuffed in front of dozens of classmates. Kevin watched from afar, leaning against a wall with crossed arms and a look of absolute coldness. It was as if he had won a battle. But little did he know that victory would bring consequences he could never control. Kristen was immediately called. She left an important meeting and went straight to the police station. When she saw Ben sitting in a cell, his face streaked with tears and shame, something inside her broke. "I know you didn't do this," she said, eyes misty. "I never touched that, Kristen. Never. I don't know where it came from." "I know, and I will prove it." Kristen called an old friend, Thomas, a brilliant lawyer who had defended impossible cases before. Within hours, he secured Ben's temporary release under Kristen's custody. But the damage was done. Ben's image was tarnished. The looks at school grew heavy again. The whispered, cruel conversations resumed. Kristen knew something was wrong. Ben wouldn't lie. So, with Thomas's help, she demanded the school's security footage. After days of bureaucracy and resistance, they gained access to the locker room records, and there it was, the image of Kevin rummaging through Ben's backpack, looking around cautiously and placing something at the bottom of the bag. It was a shock. Kristen watched the video silently, pale-faced, heartbroken. My own son. The disappointment was deep. This went far beyond teenage spite. It was betrayal, violence. That night, Kristen went up to Kevin's room with the video in hand. He was playing video games, laughing with headphones on, oblivious to his mother's presence. "Kevin." He slowly took off the headphones. "What is it?" She simply placed the tablet in front of him. The video started playing. Kevin froze. The blood drained from his face. Don't say anything. I just want you to know how much you have disappointed me. You put at risk the life of a boy who never harmed you, out of envy, out of selfishness. Mom, pack your things. You're going to live with your father. And before you say anything, it's for an indefinite time. Maybe he can teach you what I clearly couldn't. Kevin tried to argue, cried, apologized, but Kristen was firm. The next morning, Kevin flew to Europe, crying at the airport. And Ben was embraced by Kristen like a true son. Justice was beginning to be restored, but the pain of that humiliation still burned in Ben's chest. He had been betrayed, humiliated, unjustly imprisoned, but he had also been believed. And that would change everything. From that day forward, he decided no one would ever make him bow again. Ben didn't let the episode destroy him. Although the memories of that cruel morning haunted him, he used the pain as fuel. The time he spent on the court increased. He trained alone under the scorching sun or in the light rain that fell in the late afternoons. He didn't ask for anything. He just played. Shot after shot, perfect pivots, endurance runs, firm and precise dribbles. Sweat and silence became his allies. At school, the change was noticeable. The basketball coach watched him closely, impressed by the focus and intensity of each practice. Within weeks, Ben became a starter on the junior team, and in less than 2 months, he was called up to compete in the state championship. With every game, the crowd shouted his name louder and louder. It was as if the world was finally recognizing his worth. Reports started appearing in local newspapers. The boy who beat the system with a basketball. That's what the journalists called him. Kristen watched from the front row, always with teary eyes and a proud smile. But Ben's greatest victory was not yet public.
He had made friends. For the first time in his life, he felt accepted, like he belonged. Boys who once mocked his clothes now asked for advice during practice. People invited him to parties, to study together. Ben was still reserved, but was beginning to laugh more easily and open up. Then, one Friday afternoon, as he was preparing for an important semifinal, someone unexpected was waiting for him at the school gate. It was his mother. Thinner, with deep dark circles under her eyes and wrinkled clothes, she looked at him with a mix of guilt and plea. "Benjamin." He stopped. The world around seemed to fall silent. "I heard about you. On TV. You became a star. I came to see you, son." Ben took a deep breath. There was anger, hurt, pain, but also a silent sadness at seeing the woman he once loved in pieces. "Now you remember you have a son?" "I know I messed up, a lot, but I'm trying to change. I joined a rehab group. I've been clean for 2 months. I just wanted a chance to, maybe, talk." Ben stayed silent for long seconds. "I hope you get better, really. But I can't let you pull me back into that hole. Not now. I fought too hard to get out of there. Kristen saved me. She believed in me when no one else did, including you." The woman began to cry. Ben took a deep breath and added, "I forgive you, but I'm not going back with you. My home is with Kristen now. She gave me what you never could, peace." He turned and walked to practice, each step lighter, firmer. He was no longer the boy who ate cookies in a park. He was a young man, with purpose, with an identity, and he was about to achieve the impossible. Weeks later, Ben was officially invited to join one of the greatest junior basketball teams in the United States. It was the first step toward a dream that once seemed unreachable, the NBA. Kristen cried when she received the news. She made a point of preparing a small celebration at home. Clara, the housekeeper, made his favorite cake. Friends came. For the first time, the mansion was full of laughter and sincere hugs. And it was in the middle of that celebration that the doorbell rang. When Kristen opened the door, she felt the ground shake. Kevin was there, with suitcases in hand and eyes cast down. "Mom, can I come in?" Kristen said nothing. She just stepped aside and let him in. Ben froze when he saw him. The two stared at each other in silence. The atmosphere in the house changed immediately. The guests noticed and quietly left. "I didn't come to fight. I came to apologize. For the first time, truly." Ben stayed silent. Kevin took a deep breath. "I was an idiot, arrogant, spoiled, and cowardly. I had everything, and yet I saw you as a threat, just because you were better than me at everything I always got for free." Ben crossed his arms. "And now? Now, I just want to try to fix things. I don't expect you to trust me, nor to forgive me, but I need to change, and I want to start here." Kristen watched everything silently, with tears in her eyes. The son she saw leave was one person. The one coming back was another. Ben looked at Kristen, then at Kevin. He walked toward him. The silence was as heavy as it was sacred. "I haven't forgotten what you did, but I'm not like you. And maybe, if you're really willing to change, we can start over. Slowly." Kevin nodded, tears in his eyes. And there, in the room where everything seemed to collapse months before, two teenagers shook hands. A small gesture, but full of meaning. Kristen smiled. Life, after all, is made of falls, but also second chances. Life has a strange way of showing us that sometimes the heart needs to break in order to become whole. For Ben, the pain of rejection by his own mother had left a deep scar, But over time, that wound would turn into a bridge. As his career as a professional basketball player gained momentum, he realized that success didn't taste the same if he couldn't share it with the roots that, fragile and twisted as they were, still connected him to the beginning of it all. He never forgot the day he left jail with a broken heart and found Kristen outside, standing there holding a letter in her hands, her face flooded with tears. That letter was from his mother, and it was there, on that cold, damp sidewalk, that something stirred inside Ben. The pain, the anger, the hurt, it was all still there. But there was also a spark of hope. In the weeks that followed, between intense training sessions and interview invitations, Ben made a silent decision. At the first opportunity, he borrowed a car and drove to the old neighborhood where he had grown up. Each corner looked grayer than the last, but when he stopped in front of the small, peeling house, he saw a change. There were flowers in the window, a new curtain, and at the gate, his mother, Margaret, holding a broom, sweeping the sidewalk. She didn't see him right away. Ben stood there frozen, heart tight and hands sweating, as if he were a child again. When she looked up and saw him, she dropped the broom and covered her mouth with her hands. Time seemed to stop. "Mom." That was all he said, and that simple word seemed to cut through years of silence, pain, and regret. She cried. He cried too, and they embraced for long minutes. Margaret was nothing but bones and remorse, but there was a new light in her eyes. She told Ben humbly that she had been clean for 7 months, attending support meetings, and had finally gotten a job as a kitchen assistant at a local school. "It's still not much," she said, ashamed, wiping her eyes, "but it's honest, and I'm trying. I don't want to hurt you anymore, never again." Ben didn't say much that day. He just opened his backpack and took out a bag with groceries. Bread, rice, milk, fruit. Then he took out an envelope with some money. Margaret refused at first, but Ben insisted, and before leaving, he promised to come back. And he did, whenever he could, on days off, holidays, after practice, sometimes just for coffee, other times to bring more supplies or change a light bulb in the kitchen. In silence, mother and son stitched together what was left of their relationship. It was slow but true. Margaret would get emotional watching her son's interviews on TV. She never called to ask for anything, but he always showed up. Always. The neighborhood, which once whispered criticisms about her, now looked at her with respect. "She's Ben's mom, the one whose son made it," they said. And Margaret, little by little, learned to smile again. Kristen, always discreet, knew about the visits, and she supported them. She never demanded gratitude, never required loyalty. She just watched, tenderly, the man Ben was becoming. A man who chose to forgive, even though he had every reason to give up. The reunion between Kristen and Margaret happened a year later at a charity event organized by Ben to raise funds for underprivileged youth. Margaret arrived in a simple dress, her eyes moist with tears. When she saw Kristen across the hall, she hesitated, but Kristen walked over and extended her hand. "You raised a strong boy. I just continued the work," Kristen said with a smile. Margaret cried. And in that moment, the two women who silently had shaped Ben, one through painful love, the other through steady love, recognized each other. Ben, watching the scene from afar, smiled. Because he finally understood. The past could not be erased, but the future could be rewritten, with kindness, with courage, with forgiveness. And every time he returned to the old neighborhood to visit his mother, he no longer saw ruins. He saw roots, because even trees that grow crooked can bear sweet fruit. And Ben was living proof of that. Ben's fame as a professional basketball player grew with every season. It wasn't just his talent shining on the court, it was the heart with which he played, the dedication with which he trained, the respect he showed his teammates and opponents. But there was something inside him that grew even faster than his stats, the desire to give back. Ben knew where he came from. He knew the taste of going to bed hungry, the cold of a torn mattress on the floor, the shame of not having decent shoes. And he also knew what a gesture of compassion could do. The day Kristen opened the door of her home and heart to a boy who wasn't hers changed everything. Now it was his turn to open doors. During one of his visits to his biological mother's house, Ben had a conversation that echoed in his mind for weeks. Margaret, now sober and working as a kitchen assistant at a public school, was washing dishes while Ben put some fruit he had brought into the fridge. "You don't know how much you help me with these groceries, son," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "If it weren't for you, I think I would have given up already." Ben walked up behind her and hugged her. "You didn't give up, Mom. You got back up, and I'm just following your example." At that moment, Ben knew what he had to do: create a place where other people, like Margaret, like himself, could find support, hope, and a foundation to start over. With this idea in mind, he sought out Kristen. She welcomed him into her home with a proud smile. Whenever Ben showed up, her heart overflowed. "So, you want to build an institute?" she asked, after listening carefully. "Yes. A place for at-risk children and youth. A center with food, tutoring, psychological support, sports, arts, and not just for them, also for mothers, fathers. I want to help entire families rebuild themselves, just like I was rebuilt." Kristen didn't hesitate. She grabbed her folder, opened her laptop, and said, "Let's design this project together." The chosen name was Instituto Raíces, the slogan, where pain turns into strength. The first step was to find land. Kristen financed the purchase of a spacious lot on the outskirts of a city where an abandoned factory used to be. Ben dreamed of using the structure to create something welcoming and modern, with courts, classrooms, a colorful cafeteria, emotional support rooms, and even emergency dormitories. The architect who took on the project was moved by the proposal. Soon others offered to help, including two people Ben hadn't expected: Kevin and Margaret. Kevin was now a more mature man. After all the past conflicts, he had undergone therapy, reconciled with Kristen, and graduated in business administration. He was working at an NGO and closely followed Ben's growth as an athlete. Their relationship still carried scars, but there was also respect and a quiet admiration growing. "I want to help with the project, if you let me," Kevin said at one of the meetings. "I know I'm not the most qualified person, but I've learned from my mistakes, and I want to be part of this." Ben looked at him for a moment and smiled. "Of course you can help, Kevin. It will be an honor." And Margaret also asked to be involved. She wanted to cook during the first weeks and help set up the community kitchen. And so, for the first time, Margaret and Kristen worked side by side. Two women from very different worlds, now united by the love for the same young man. Months later, Instituto Raíces was inaugurated with a simple but moving ceremony. Children ran around the new courts, mothers cried as they saw the cafeteria, teenagers' eyes sparkled as they entered the computer rooms. Ben stepped onto the makeshift stage, holding the microphone with trembling hands. "Today isn't about me. It's about all of us, about everyone who has ever felt invisible, unwanted, discarded. This place exists because someone believed in me, and now I want to believe in you. This is our home. Here, you are seen, you matter, and you will succeed. Applause echoed. Kristen cried softly, holding Margaret's hand. Kevin took photos to post on the Institute's social media, and Ben finally felt that his past made sense. Every pain had turned into strength, every abandonment into motivation. In the months that followed, Instituto Raíces became a national reference. Reports began to highlight the project, and more sponsors appeared. But what touched Ben the most were the children's eyes when they greeted him on visits, eyes that, like his once had known pain, but now they also knew hope. One day, while walking through the rooms beside Kristen, he stopped and surprised her with a hug. "Thank you for everything," he said, moved. "You taught me to love unconditionally, and now that love is multiplying." Kristen smiled. "I just did what any decent person would do." Ben looked at her tenderly. "No, you did what few people have the courage to do. Love the invisible." There, in that sunlit hallway of the Institute, surrounded by children's laughter and the smell of bread coming from the oven, Ben felt something no victory on the court had ever given him: peace. And deep in his heart, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. And that was Ben's journey, a story marked by injustice, twists, and above all, by choices that change destinies. Because sometimes the greatest victories aren't on the court or in bank accounts, but in the hearts we manage to transform. If this story touched you in some way, made you reflect, moved you, don't forget to follow the channel. Here you'll find more stories like this, real, intense, and reminding us of the power each of us has to start over.